Pregame.com.
Steelers at San Francisco, Monday Night Football. Okay, let's get one thing out of the way. The Harrison deal, I have some adamant feelings about it. We're going to put that at the end of the video in overtime. So those that want just the handicapping, great. And for those that want to hear my unique insights into the Harrison situation, then we'll have it at the end. Okay, clearly this game is super important for Pittsburgh and for San Francisco, both fighting for playoff positioning for the most part. Steelers, if they win out, have a very decent chance. And remember, their next two games, Rams and Browns. This is the game that stands likely between them and a 13-3 season. And the funny thing is they might be a wild card at 13-3, but odds are pretty good Baltimore loses again. They've got tougher games. So this is key. And San Fran's fighting with New Orleans for the number 2 spot. So I look at motivation high for both teams.
Absolutely, and ironically, finally we get a good Monday night game after some real stinkers, and also I think the Sunday night game is San Diego and Baltimore. So you've got a situation with Baltimore, who Pittsburgh is trying to stay even with, but Pittsburgh needs to actually win one more game because they lost both games to Baltimore.
Baltimore has a tiebreaker. So high motivation for both. Now, let's talk Harrison on the field or his effect not being on the field. I talked with Chris Andrews, our buddy at Cal Neva. He's an odds maker or a bookmaker. He says Harrison is not even a half a point. So, yeah, on the field as a player, not a half a point, so a quarter point or some small factor. But is this a distraction? That's my first question. Tomlin has been pretty ruthless and not wanting to talk about this and saying, hey, Harrison made a mistake. He's got to suffer. Now we've got to focus on what we can control. How much of a factor is this in your mind?
As far as the disruption part of it goes, Tomlin is a no-nonsense guy. I don't think he's going to let this be a factor as far as disruption. As far as a half a point with Chris Andrews, I think Harrison's worth a little bit more than that.
More than a half a point. He's saying he's not even worth anything.
Look at when he came back. He had missed a couple games, earlier in the season. The game he came back was the Baltimore game, the second meeting. He played like a beast in that game, and I just think that he is an integral part of the defense.
But isn't that a typical Square reaction, which is that, oh God, I know his name. He's really important. And it's like the pros here in town typically, and again, you're a Pittsburgh expert, so that's why we're talking. Instead of me dismissing it and moving on, I'm asking you, the typical defensive player is not worth actual points. Now you add it all. Now the theory is who's the backup and all that stuff. Hasn't Pittsburgh played pretty well? Now here's the other question to me is Woodley. My understanding is Woodley is playing. Now, assuming that's the case, having one linebacker out is a lot different than having two because of the cluster injury effect. If Woodley plays and Harrison doesn't, I think we would agree that's a pretty even trade, right?
Right. If Woodley is at or close to 100%. My only problem with Woodley is for the last couple weeks, we've been hearing maybe he's trying, but not ready yet. So if he comes back, if Woodley plays this week, what do you expect out of him?
I think that he played like 15 plays or whatever the game before, and personally, I'm a Harrison fan, and if I had to choose, I'd take Harrison over Woodley myself.
I agree with you.
So, but I think we're starting to split hairs here. So Woodley's, let's just say this because we're taping on Wednesday. With Harrison out, if Woodley is also out or hobbled, now it becomes worth some point, or at least a half a point or more to me. If Woodley plays and Harrison doesn't, and Woodley's close to 100%, then to me it's a pretty close, trade-off.
Okay, I'll give you that.
Okay, so, but in the distraction, I think we both agree Pittsburgh's not going to lie. If anything, it might, what's the right word for it? It might bring them together as a team because there's kind of this us against the NFL going on with the Steelers. It might actually feed into that a little bit and be a slight advantage in that way.
And it's not technically, but it's the same principle. It's almost the injured player theory. You've got a star out.
That's a good point. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about San Francisco. Oh, well, let's talk other X factors. Big Ben. All right. Now, Andrew's actually VegasRankings.com, the collective of everyone that participates in that, and that's a voting on from Vegas experts on how good the NFL teams and the college teams are and how much injured players are worth. Has Big Ben at 3.5 points. You know, that feels low, but I think all these numbers always feel low because we emotionally overreact. My gut feeling is Big Ben's almost going to be at 100%. I mean, he played in the game. It's not like he got any more hurt in the interim. And he was playing. Now, if he's playing like he played in that Cleveland game, that's a problem. But, you know, with all the time off from Thursday to the next Monday, I'm pretty optimistic on him. What's your take on Big Ben?
I'm going to watch the practice and get the reports on how he moved in practice.
He didn't practice today. It's Wednesday. He didn't practice.
Friday's the key practice. That's the one that'll tell the story, and that's where I'll decide exactly what I'm going to do. I got to admit, last week when he went down, the only thing I could think of was, being the fan that I am, obviously, you could see the season crumble if Ben goes down. But it was like, I was so excited. I am going to be at this game on Monday going to San Francisco. And I say, I really didn't want to pay all the money I paid for tickets and airfare to look at Charlie Batch.
Well, but let's not forget that Batch looked horrible when he came in off the bench. But remember, if you don't have time to prep, it's a very different experience. Batch, now it was a year ago, and Batch is older, but he looked great when he was filling in the first 4 games of the suspension last year, and he played a great game against Tampa Bay, for example, who was a 10-16 last year. So my sense is that this is a whole different video if Big Ben's out, but my gut feeling is there'd be a lot of value on Pittsburgh at that point. Let's talk the line for a second, because right now it's really uncertain. So let's do this wise guy style, like we talk about. I'm gonna say at what line I like. I'm gonna kind of set the boundaries. Okay. So to me, if I can, assuming Big Ben's playing, I certainly like Pittsburgh at +3. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think you'll see +3.
Well, that's what setting boundaries is for. Okay. And personally, at Pittsburgh -1, I like San Francisco. Okay, give me San Fran +1. I like that. Anywhere in between, I think the 110's probably eating you up. And it's interesting to do this because that's really what every game should be is I like team A here, I like team B here, and in between is the juice. It's going to be a range in there, but it's not going to be where it's profitable at -110. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about this game as if it's right in the middle, and let's assume 4-2. Let's assume San Fran's -1.5.
Which, if you asked me to put a line on the game, that's the line I would give you is San Fran -1.5.
Okay, and we didn't even prep for that. All right. So, what's some other than the factors that we've laid forth, the distractions with Harrison? Troy's actually hobbled a little bit too. So some hobbled situations. Big Ben, Pouncey the center, in second most important position on the field for most teams behind the quarterback. A lot of injury issues that we can't address on Wednesday. What other factors are you seeing?
Well, there's one big factor, game planning. San Francisco is going to have a big edge in game planning, some help for the Steelers because Jim's going to be talking to his brother this week, several times on some tips on how to prepare for the Steelers. His big brother.
What makes me super sad is before this year, I could have waved my hand and scoffed, but now I don't get to. But go ahead.
But so that's going to be an edge that most teams wouldn't have that San Francisco is going to have, and I got to say. We saw this earlier this year on Monday Night Football with the Detroit Lions when they had a rare home game where it actually meant something. This is the biggest, not only because it's on Monday Night Football, this is the biggest game in San Francisco probably in the last decade since the glory years of the Niners. This is huge. San Francisco is going to be rocking on Monday night. And we saw
What year do you think it is right now?
What year do you think it is? It's 2011.
So the last decade, when was the glory year of the 49ers?
Well, I mean, let's say that they had some game in the last 10 years, but it's been at least 10 years since they've had a game this big in San Francisco.
I think it's been at least 5 since Montana quarterback, right?
Yeah, all right. But that it is going to be a huge, the crowd's going to be intense. I'm going to be there trying to offset as much as I can.
Now let me ask you: Are you wearing Steelers gear?
I'm bringing it, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to have it underneath me, because some of
So
these.
you're in the closet.
Well, if I was going to an Oakland game and seeing the Steelers, I wouldn't have any black and gold on. I guarantee you that. I'd have my my Steeler shirt underneath me, and that would be it. But I think I'll be safe.
What did the Baltimore? Here's the reality. Baltimore beat up San Fran from what I could see. Mm-hmm. This is AFC North football. Right?
There's no.
And number two, now they go and lose on the road against Arizona. At what point? I always say this: if this were the first 2 games of the year, how would we be looking at San Fran right now? It's always funny with only 16 games. Every couple games are so meaningful. What is your take on San Fran right now?
Well, I'm going to say one thing. Don't overreact to last week's game because, as we did several videos, we did one, Steven and I know Brian did a video with VR and you did with Scott last week. This was a bad spot for the 49ers last week. They were playing a game the week after they clinched a division. This is a young ball club. They clinched a division for the first time. And they were on the road with this big Monday night game on the horizon. That is a typical sandwich game.
All right, so my question isn't for you to set the stage of what happened. What is your take on the Niners right now? How many teams do you have ranked above? So they lose 2 games and it hasn't changed?
Losing last week's game didn't change what I went into last week with.
Okay.
Right now I have them as the third best team in the NFC.
Okay, so third best team in the NFC.
Green Bay, New Orleans, San Francisco.
Yeah, but who's the 4th best team in the NFC?
Right now you'd have to probably go to the Giants.
All right, so the Giants are not a serious team for the Super Bowl. So maybe we need a little, to refine your opinion a little bit more, well, let me ask you this. How much did you adjust your opinion on San Fran after the Baltimore game? This team, some people might have thought, this team had 1 loss 2 weeks ago. So you can't lose 2 games in a row and not somewhat affect your opinion or have your opinion affected on this team. I'm not sure why you
lost 2 in a row. The Baltimore game was on Thanksgiving.
All right, well, 2 games in 3 weeks or whatever I don't know why you're trying to get me to drag this out. Where is San Fran out to where they were a month ago in your mind?
Slightly less, but not as far. Remember, again, so you say don't make excuses for games, but as a handicapper, I have to dissect the games when they're played and how they're played. Remember, when they played Baltimore on the road on a Thursday that we talk ad nauseum about how much of a disadvantage that is. And they only lost by 10 points in a low-scoring game. So, you can't totally...
But isn't 10 points in a low-scoring game more meaningful than 10 points in a high-scoring game?
But on the flip side of it, San Francisco, they held Baltimore at home to 16 points. That's...
I agree. Listen, I think it gets too easy to say, I've got this vague sense of a motivational issue, so I'm going to discount they got beat by Atlanta. I find that ludicrous. The fact that you could have went and bet $100K on San Fran plus 3.5 means that was what the expectation was. They fell short of it. That's got to mean something. But you make a really good point about the 49ers. Because I'm kind of just got it. That's what happens as the weeks go by and you start to forget the nuances of the game. That was a road game on a Thursday and it was across the country. Yeah, that scares me a little bit. All right, so your point is San Fran's dropped in your mind less than probably the average fan's mind.
Right.
All right. Okay, any other key factors in this game?
You've covered them all.
All right. I got to tell you, I think we did a good job here at break because we really don't know all this injury stuff. Right. So we kind of created an if-then on all the scenarios, and that should serve you guys well on Monday when you watch his video. Marco, a true expert with the Steelers, got another winner last Thursday, and a lot of people took advantage of that dollar best bet you had. What's your updated Pittsburgh record?
Updated Pittsburgh record, 22-10 last 2 years, and before that.
Is this on the Steelers specifically?
This is Pittsburgh football. That includes the Panthers. And 49-22 previous to that.
So these are the kind of records that people used to lie about back in the 70% days. This is niche-y, but again, you make it clear in your packages when you do have a Steelers game, and it's something I personally follow, especially when you agree with me. So what I'm gonna do is you know, I was waiting this whole video. We're 15 minutes in right now, and at no point did you mention that my correlated parlay was so beautiful last week. I was waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting.
I figured you'd get to it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Here's what I'm going to say. I gave your line ranges, and let's let that be the pick. If I can get the Steelers a +3 without the injury, with Big Ben specifically, I'm going to take it. If I can get San Fran +1, I'm going to take it. In between, I'm going to be passing on it. And if somehow, some way, Ben is out, so let's do the math on that, is if Ben is out, then I'm assuming the line's going to be, I think they'll overreact, so fine. Line will probably be San Fran 5.5 or 6, I'm guessing.
I don't think it'll go that high. I think it'll go to 4 if he's out.
If Big Ben's out, you think the game's going to 4?
There's still a the people still look at the Steelers as a defensive team, and
all right. Well, I'm shocked that you're saying that.
Well,
but give me 6 with Charlie Batch, and you've got another play. All right, guys. Remember, all of our videos are in a super thread each week. And this is videos that Marco and I do, Vegas Run, or Scott Spreitzer, who's joined the team, and Brian Leonard, and Steven Nover, a lineup of all-stars. All of those videos in the same thread in the pregame forums. You can go there directly at pregamevideos.com. And the beauty of this thread is if you have any questions about what you saw in the videos, ask them, and one of the participants will answer you directly. We continue the conversation. Talk to you there.
No, one more thing.
Oh, one more.
Yeah, Monday nights they get 100.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
It's Christmas time, and the Ebenezer Scrooge is coming out here. He doesn't want to give that 100 away.
We do a special thing on Monday. Thank you, because in the Steeler video, I forgot it was Monday. Is you guess the score in that same super thread, and if you get the score exactly right, you win 100 pregame dollars to spend any way you want. It's a free roll, and plus it's fun to kind of let everyone see what you're predicting. If you get it exactly right, it's a free roll, pregamevideos.com.